much money do you need to consider yourself financially independent? That's our topic today on Friends Talk Financial Planning. I'm Bridget Sullivan Mermel, and I have a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm John Shearer. I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin. And before we dig into this question, I'm really excited about talking about it, but I want to remind everybody to hit the subscribe button. Right? By subscribing, you help raise our profile, help other people to find us, and help the channel. So please hit subscribe. And once that's done, now let's talk about this. Like, how do you know how much money you have? How do I know if I'm financially independent? And I want to hear what you have to say about this, Bridget. But first off, I just wanted to bring up that this is what we're trying to do is not tell you, hey, if you have this much exactly, you can retire, right? This is, hey, I'm thinking about this in the next few years. Am I on track for this stuff, right? It gets a little more specific, but this is, how do I know that maybe it's time to get some financial help? So what do you talk about when you talk with, your friends or clients? How much do I need to retire?
Well, I say retire. A lot of people don't just retire.
Yeah, right.
So I'm thinking about this spot where maybe you're working less, but you're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. But maybe you haven't gotten to full retirement yet. That's what I consider financially independent. And I consider retirement financially independent as well. Yeah. But to get to this phase, you want to have 7 times your annual income and your net worth. Okay. Then, and we talked about that in a previous episode. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to pivot and start looking at your expenses, your annual expenses, and your investment portfolio. Okay, so this is going to be different than when we were talking before about your net worth. We're getting more specific to say, okay, what do you have in your investment portfolio and how much do you need to live? And those are the things that we're going to compare in this stage in your life. Mm-hmm. And the benchmark we want here is to have 7 to 10 times of your annual living expenses in your portfolio. Yeah,
portfolio, investment portfolio, 7 to 10 times expenses.
Right.
And, I think this is really an interesting topic, and that's exactly what we tell our clients too. And as we talked about in previous episodes, at first we talk about net worth. How is your net worth compared to your income? And so I guess maybe one thing that I think is useful to talk about is why are we making a transition now from net worth to income and now moving to investment portfolio to expenses, right? And I think that one of the reasons is that net worth is really important for building, the whole picture, but you can't spend all of your net worth, right? Real estate, other things, paying down debt is important, but you can't spend those things. And as we get into financial independence, what becomes important is cash flow becomes really important, and that portfolio is the focus. So that's one of the differentiators for me on that.
Absolutely. That's it.
And then the other thing as I think about is it's easy, net worth versus income. I can look at my tax return on my W-2. Here's how much I make. And now, as you said, we're talking about, hey, this is still generalities, but it's more specific than it used to be in that knowing my living expenses can be more difficult than I can't look at my tax return or my pay stub and find out my living expenses. But that's what the cash flow needs to cover. So we're starting to narrow that funnel down a little bit, right? Does that make sense? Is that how you think about it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing is that your cash flow and your living expenses are going to be major predictors of your financial ability in retirement, okay? Mm-hmm. And so getting a handle on those now at this stage is really important. But also sometimes there's people who don't meet the standard with net worth and annual income because maybe they're 49 and all of a sudden they doubled their income.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so they haven't had a chance to catch up, but they haven't doubled their expenses at all. Their expenses might be low, or there's plenty of people that we end up working with that their expenses are low, so it doesn't take as much annual income as we talk about in the previous stage. So once you're in trying to judge, am I in financial independence, it matters how much you spend. Yeah. It doesn't really matter how much you make. Really, how much you spend is what's important.
And it's these ideas of benchmarks, right, where it's not an exact science. This doesn't, but it's like, hey, I know, are we directionally accurate? Are we on track with things? And then, we talked previously about, hey, driving in the right general direction. Now we're starting to get to the point where, hey, we kind of need to know where the highways are. And then we're going to need to know exactly what roads are to get to where we're trying to get to. And this is the place, I think, where folks might look to hire a financial planner, where often folks come to us from the financial planning standpoint is, hey, I'm driving south. You don't need a ton of guidance on that. And now as it starts to get more narrow, that it becomes more complicated, right? And frankly, more important, right? When you start thinking about, what about I gotta make my money last the next 30 years without earning an income potentially, right? Those sorts of things might be self-serving, right? That's how we get clients on board. But, but this is the place where, hey, it can make some sense to do that because it is more complicated.
Well, there's those emotional parts of it that you're talking about, like the importance of the decision, et cetera. But then there's also a lot of times at this stage, the financial planner can actually pay for themselves a lot easier than you can in earlier stages because there's more money to work with. And so that's what I find too, is that a lot of times it's like the retirement, the financial independence and the retirement transition, the people want some professional help to work through it. Like both emotionally and just the numbers wise too. And intellectually, they want to understand the numbers too.
One of the biggest transitions a person makes in their lifetime, right? And they do it once, right? And how many times have you done something once and did it exactly the best way you could do it the first time, right? That sort of thinking. I wanted to circle back on something you brought up earlier, Bridget, in that the idea of working part-time and maybe the sort of transitioning. I think that's a really great point, is that as I think about 7 to 10 times income, for me, the younger you are, if you're 55, 57, 53, and you're going to, listen, I want to step back and maybe retire, maybe work less, well, then you need to be closer on the top end of that number, right? Yeah, I want to see income, your investments 10 times, 12 times. If I'm later in that, hey, I'm already 65 and I'm going to be able to start to go on Medicare in a few years and claim Social Security, you probably need to have a little less, for me anyways. Geez, 7 or 8 times your spending were probably good if you're on the lower end. So it's this sort of continuum of things. It's not, I get to here, I can do this, but hopefully it helps gives you some sense for
people guidelines. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, I guess I'm on track, and it takes some time to kind of get used to that. Yeah, I guess I could really retire. I'm in the right track. I still like work. I'm 58. I'm 62. I love what I do, but I just want to know that I could step back. This is a great guideline for that.
Right. Exactly. And the other thing that I'd like to mention is that it's a great time of your life to make sure that you have a grip on what your expenses are. That's not to say cut them down, but just have some way of knowing what your expenses are. Yeah. Whether, and because that'll be key in your retirement decisions. So knowing how much you spend a year or a month helps a lot, and maybe how much you aspire to spend when you're retired. That would be helpful too.
Yeah, that's great. And for me, for anyone, a lot of the folks we work with, it takes some time. It's not like you can just go down and scratch it out. Yeah, you can, but it takes a couple of years of think and just being mindful.
Right.
Oh, that's right. Let's kind of pay. How much? We'd like to spend a little more than that, or geez, we don't need to spend that much, or just that thought process. I think is really useful.
Yeah, and I'm not advocating changing your spending at all. I'm just advocating knowing how much you spend and you're tracking it. Yeah. So I'm not. And then if you want to change it, that's fine. That's for different reasons. That's fine. Right. But I'm just saying that it's important for the planning to know how much you want to spend.
That's great. Well, I think that's a great way to sort of circle back, is know how much you're spending, right? Or start to think about what are your expenses. And when your investment portfolio is 7 to 10 times your living expenses, that's when you know you're in a position where you're going to be able to retire, maybe in the very near future, maybe in the slightly more distant future, but you're on that right track. That's a good benchmark for knowing, are you going to be financially independent in the next few years, right?
Great. And with that, I'm Bridget Sullivan-Ramel, and this is John Shearer. We both have fee-only financial planning practices, and we're members of ACP, or the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners. You can find out more about them at acplanners.org. It's a nationwide not-for-profit group of planners that operate with the same principles. So if you like how we're talking about things, you can find a planner near you.
And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and subscribe to Friends Talk Financial Planning. And with that, until next time.